Hey there, Joe Drake here with the Axiom Fitness Academy, and I'm really glad you're here with me right now as we are going to go through in this video and break down the example template that you have access to. So if you want a little bit more in-depth explanation and a little bit more of the why behind why these templates are set up the way that they are for this intermediate to beginner style client twice a week, then go back. You're going to watch the other video. It is a little bit longer that explains your blank template, because the thought process and understanding, how you can use that template and plug in certain exercises. So this video, more so, I just want to give you the thought process behind why I would choose the exercises that I've chosen and why this fits with our training model. If you are working with a client who's twice a week, again, this template and this example workout is more built around like a beginner to an intermediate. So a lot of the movements are not super complicated, not that they need to be, and you can see how you can progress this over time. All right, so I want to jump in. We have two workouts. We have lift session A and lift session B. In the previous video, if you guys do watch the full breakdown, I kind of talk a little bit about everything from like preparation in the workouts to priming the body, why we do those things the way that we do it. But right now, what I want to do is I really want to just focus on the workout itself. So boom, we've already gotten through our prep and prime portion, and now we are into our workout A, which is going to be more of a lower body push. Again, more squatting, lunging type movements, and upper body pull, more back, bicep, pulling, horizontal and vertical movements. And in here, idea behind this workout, especially with a beginner and intermediate type client, is choosing movements that are pretty easy to coach and teach. There's a little less complicated setup involved, and you'll find that fits with a lot of the exercises here. So our first one, our knee dominant squat. Talked about this in the longer explanation video about why we would do this and how we end up going into more of a knee dominant lunge in the second set. But here, basic goblet squat. All right, so I say basic, you can really load a goblet squat really heavy. So this could be the primary squat variation for quite some time, right? We want to see progress in certain exercises as we work through weeks 1 through 4, and if we come back and repeat this in a different cycle. But goblet squats, and I really like in this first triplex with our goblet squats and our single arm band rows, because first off, from a given session setup, whatever space you might be training in. Right now I'm in a functional space here, but you might have multiple trainers working at the same time. Maybe there's a class going on, maybe someone's jumping on equipment. So something that I really like to think about when you're setting these triplexes up is like what's required and what's needed. Do I have two separate pieces of equipment that are entirely across the gym, or do I have some things that I can bring together? So in this first set, it's nice because we don't need to travel far. We can do this entire set in a pretty small space and area, so you can accomplish it no matter where you're training. That's just kind of a sidebar, but one thing that I think is important to think about when you're delivering great training sessions, and I wanted to apply here in the template. So the goblet squat, right? All we need is a kettlebell or dumbbell if you don't have access to a kettlebell. And the nice thing about going from the goblet squat to the single arm band row is going to be also the load on the shoulders. So obviously, as I'm loading up and as I get stronger and stronger with that lower body and that goblet squat, whether it's dumbbell or kettlebell loaded, it is still a little fatigue on the upper body, a little bit on the shoulders, obviously our thoracic spine holding us there. And then that single arm band row just offsets all of that. Okay, because we very easily also could have done, and it would all still be a great set, a goblet squat and let's say a single arm dumbbell row. But some clients, especially beginner and intermediate, they might struggle to maintain when they're doing dumbbell rows, maintain that good proper position. And I find with a standing exercise, it's a little bit easier to accomplish and really start from a good state of posture and position. So band row, cable row, standing version, really great one here. And they're going to be hitting those opposite muscle groups with our horizontal pull exercise, and then going into a lateral plank. And on here, starting out, even throughout these 4 weeks, the nice thing about the templates here is that in these third exercises especially, it's really easy to add some nice weekly variety, even if the first two stay the same. So for me, beginner style client, goblet squat's going to be my first exercise in that triplex. Single arm band rows, we're just going to focus on increasing the resistance and becoming more efficient with those movements over those 4 weeks. All right, so that's going to be getting harder. But that third, that lateral plank variation, that might be where I throw in not just some physical progression, but also just some fun mental variety. All right, so we're doing one version of a lateral plank. Maybe it's just a traditional side plank from maybe its bottom knee is bent on the ground, down. Week 2, we go to legs are straight. Week 3, maybe we do a different variation where we're lifting the leg or we're doing a band row. So it's easy to add in some fun variety week to week, but the main pieces of that set are staying the same, okay? Then moving on from there, we go back to and we emphasize an upper body pulling move. So in Triplex 2, 2-arm high cable rows. Okay, so if you have access in the gym, again, this could be a band. If you don't have access to cables, whatever, we're getting instead of that just horizontal pull, now we're getting a slight more vertical component, and 2-arm high cable row. I like this one. Pretty easy for most clients to pick up, and still pretty easy to load relatively heavy once they get a feel for it too, right? And the nice thing about pairing this together with our second move, again, is the way that we're getting our stresses and forces. We've got the pull that's actually kind of elongating the spine a little bit, and then we're going to have that split squat, and maybe we're going to load the split squat here or we'll load it down, but now we're going to have that gravity working against us and compressing the spine. So especially with our lower body pushing and our upper body pulling movements, when it comes to that vertical component, it's nice to pair those together because we get the distraction in the spine and then we get the compression of the spine in that second movement. So you get that with the 2-arm high cable rows and the split squats, all right? And now we're getting into that more knee dominant exercise here, or knee dominant like unilateral versus we had that bilateral move in the first one. And then going into some sort of carry. So here I like, again, with the split squat, if we did a front loaded split squat position, I would not then go do the same carry position. But if we loaded the split squat, let's say in the hands down, or maybe we even did it body weight, which is probably great for a lot of beginner style clients, that's a tough move, then I would do a top loaded exercise and carry. But really any carry variation could go well here. And this again is an easy place where you could progress week to week and a slight variation in your carries, but you keep the other two consistent. And the exercise is going to feel different. You're giving a slight different stimulus to the core. Everybody's winning in that scenario. And then our third triplex, here you can see, I feel like with a beginner and intermediate, if we're going pretty heavy and we're challenging the body with our goblet squats, we're loading those, we're loading the split squats. The third leg exercise, I'm cool with it being unloaded at this point. Again, if they're more advanced down the road, we could load this third leg exercise. But here, just a body weight lateral lunge dumbbell could be optional based on where they're at, right? So that's nice. We're still getting a third leg exercise. We're getting some frontal plane movement in there, a slight different stress on the hips and pelvis, but we're not overdoing it. We're not going to cripple them where they can't walk the next day. And then getting that upper body pull isolation, and then going into our push isolation, right? So we get a TRX reverse fly, and then band kickbacks, right? But either way, if you wanted to keep the equipment right where it's at, you could very easily do the lateral lunge, TRX reverse fly, and then TRX triceps. All I'm really doing is, pairing those isolation moves together, because at this point, we've gotten 2 really quality upper body pull movements. We've gotten, 3 pretty quality lower body pushing movements, and so a little bit of isolation to cap that off is going to put us at a great place, where we're not overdoing it in the session, but we are accumulating some good volume in the movements and the muscles that should be working. And then finishing off, you guys, just your example of this metabolic circuit for 3 rounds, right? We got a full body, a functional core move, and then a conditioning move. And here, I like to utilize bands and body weight, because by the time we're, at the end of the session, don't be doing anything that's going to be dangerous for the individual. Band squat to rows, great full body move here, working at a little faster pace, and then staying in that same central area, right? If you got bands and battle ropes set up close together, real easy to not have to worry about transition. Going right into a band core rotation. An easy transition to that second move. We're doing a standing core move, going to probably utilize more muscle mass than if we're on the ground and we're on our back. And then hitting a battle rope double wave, something that conditioning wise is going to integrate a lot of full body motion there, but you could use a cardiovascular piece as well. Okay, so just kind of going through and giving you an idea on why we chose certain exercises, or why I chose certain exercises in session A. And then in session B, honestly, a lot of the same concepts. Things that you want to keep in mind as you're pairing moves together is what's the impact on the grip, what's the impact on the low back, and then also back-to-back muscle groups versus alternating those movements is going to have a big impact. And that's why here in this beginner and intermediate, we offset the lower and the upper body in the different triplexes. Okay, so we start out here in triplex A with this kettlebell RDL. Nice hip dominant movement, easy to teach most people. You can still load it up pretty heavy, and it's a great place to start people when it comes to loading the hinge. And then going into a band chest press. This is very similar to what we did in the first workout, where we did we did a loaded goblet squat, and then we went to a band pull. So here we're doing a loaded RDL, and then we're going to a band chest press. So you're getting that stabilization component from the bands in both sessions that we're using. And you're not overdoing any of those pieces, okay? And the nice thing is, even with this, the band chest press versus the kettlebell RDL, they both cause a little bit of strain and stress on different portions of the core. Kettlebell RDL, more of the posterior, and that band chest press, you're gonna have a lot of that anterior core musculature working to hold you in place. So it's a nice, again, not just the major muscles we're working like our chest and our shoulders, but also the way it impacts the core. And then the third one, I have a dead bug variation here as the third core exercise. Because again, I want to be doing something that's not too stressful on the body, where it's going to have the core fatigued and not ready to stabilize and brace when they get into those kettlebell RDLs. All right, and then we go the same. We just move into the upper body piece where now we're emphasizing the upper body push motion. Here I have a dumbbell incline press. All right, again, direct overhead pressing, don't love it for a lot of clients, but this is still one that we can load pretty heavy, and you still get a ton of anterior deltoid. You get a good motion at the shoulder. I find that a good 45-degree angle incline actually can feel better for a lot of clients than the flat press anyways, because of some shoulder issues. So little incline press for our vertical push, and then going to a banded bench bridge. All right, so this would be a body weight bridge, back and shoulders on the bench, and then band just around either below or above the knees for a little additional abduction. Okay, so we go to kind of like an unloaded, just hinge oriented exercise. Again, we did our loaded hinge from the standing position. Now doing like a bridge variation, I find is a nice secondary lower body move to get the hamstrings and glutes. And then getting into a standing core exercise as well, band TikToks, where we're hitting that lateral core back and forth. Okay, and then getting into our third triplex, stability ball hamstring curls. This could be any hamstring curl variation. Do what's right and appropriate for the client. But I like the stability ball. Again, with a larger one, you can place a little bit less stress on the hamstrings versus, like, let's say the TRX or something else, which can be really, really challenging on those hamstrings and glutes for a new client. But stability ball hamstring curl, great way to end off that posterior chain training day with a little bit of isolation. And then easy transition, flipping it over. We hit that posterior side with our hamstring curls, flipping it over. Very controlled stability ball rollout. Not crazy on the volume. You can see here the reps are just 8 reps at our 2 sets and then anterior side. And then doing some sort of isolation move. So for me, I like it here, finishing off in this last one with just stability ball and the resistance bands. From a tool standpoint, easy usually to have them close together, so that's a good training experience. And then the resistance band chest fly, just enough to get a little bit of upper body pump if I'm working with a guy or a male client or a female client, whatever. It doesn't have to be just our males, but this could also be some sort of tricep extension, could be a band kickback here too. So you got some options there. And then finishing off with our burnout finisher, you can see some sort of full body move and conditioning move, which we talked about in the longer video, just explaining the blank template. Here just to give you some examples. Now, again, most power training should go at the beginning of a session. I find med ball slams, if they're coached right, are a fun, relatively safe way to use a power type movement in the conditioning element. All right, so a moderate, not crazy heavyweight, but moderate medicine ball here for just 6 reps. You can see on here too, I'm not going for 30 seconds, I'm not going for 20 reps, nothing crazy, still really quality movement, and it's definitely full body. If you teach a medicine ball slam correctly, we're using our legs, we're using our core, we're using our lats, it's a full body move. Nice little power associated. And then using a cardiovascular piece. So here I like, since we are doing a little bit of a power movement, that we're doing something relatively low impact. Again, if you got someone who loves to run, sprint, it could be some sprint work here. But for me, I like the opportunity to use either the bike or some battle ropes or like a VersaClimber. Honestly, I love the VersaClimber because of the alternation between the core and the upper body and the lower body being involved as well for those 30 seconds. So just wanted to give you guys some insight into the reasons behind choosing the exercises on here. Many of them are the simplest versions or simpler versions, and they give you a long way to progress people too, right? There's a lot of progressions that can come after the exercises in workout A and B here, which is nice because that means you're giving clients a really nice long runway to progress over time and continue to see and get results. So use this template, try these workouts yourself. That's going to be the best way to kind of get an idea of like, I don't think my client's going to get through all of this. I need a little bit more or less in certain areas. Maybe you got to chop one of the triplexes into a superset. It's fine, right? It's versatile. You can do what you want with it. But use it, try it out, try it with clients, plug in those exercises in. You can just straight up use the workout that I've given you here and see how even with simple movements, it'd still be really hard if you're loading it appropriately. Now, no doubt client speed will vary. You have some clients that they pick up exercises, they don't need as much coaching and cueing, they're going to get through these things faster. Some clients may not get through everything we have on there, but it's always easy just to chop some stuff off based upon the time that you've got in your session and how they're working through it in that first session or two that you do with them. Feel free to change the accessory exercises. Those third exercises in the triplex, a lot of opportunity for individualization, for fun, for variety, and you can still keep the main components of your training session the same so that we are seeing some physiological changes over time. And then just make sure as you are changing the squat variation, let's say you start with the goblet squat and you move on from there, just make sure that you're progressing appropriately, not progressing too quickly until we've mastered that movement, we've loaded it for a little while, and we're not just bouncing around from squat variation to squat variation every week, as it's going to be tough to really see long-term progress that way. But either way, guys, if you have questions about this specific template, this workout, please let me know. You guys also, you do have access to full video explanations of every exercise that's in this template. So that way you've got an idea of like, how do I perform these exercises? How do I coach them and cue them? You guys have all of that. But if you have any other questions, hit me up. You guys can reach me at joe@axiomfitnessacademy.com. And you guys can also find me on Instagram at Coach Joe Drake.